A lot of friends gave birth and they were calling me like, Sophia, now we have the placenta. What shall we do? I wrote the book because I thought every woman who is interested should be able to read and understand what she can do with her placenta. And I also wanted to appreciate that this organ is a really amazing organ and we just throw it into the bin without even taking a look at it.
First of all, a big welcome to the Midwifery Wisdom podcast. So glad you can join. Before we talk about what you've created, let's do introductions. So why don't you tell our audience who you are, where you are, what you do, and what's your mission?
So, hi everyone. My name is Sophia Johnson. I'm from Germany. I'm a medical doctor and I'm passionate about integrative medicine. So, I do a lot of acupuncture and herbal therapies, but I also do research. And I spent some years at the Placenta Lab, which is pretty close in Jena. And in the university hospital, I did research about the placenta and especially about placenta remedies that women use in the postpartum period. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I have a family and we are living here in Thuringia. And I enjoy working in the hospital and doing research in the nighttime, in the weekends. And I'm passionate about placentas.
That's just so exciting. I mean, there are so many birth workers who are passionate about placentas. What got you interested?
Actually, it was my husband. So when I gave birth to my first daughter, I just finished my medical studies, and his ex-girlfriend know a lot about placenta remedies. And she asked
Mm.
what I will do with my placenta. And I was like, hey, don't ask me this. I just gave birth. I just finished my medical studies. I don't have an idea. But since he talked about placenta and placentophagy and the use in the postpartum period, I was getting curious. And during my second pregnancy, I was working in the anesthesiology department and I was not able to work because of all this anesthetics. And so I started literature research. And then a friend told me, don't you know that the placenta lab is right around the corner? And then I went there and asked them, did you ever hear about this? And then, so this is how it all started.
Well, so I think American listeners will be quite curious to hear about this placenta lab. Tell us more about who runs that and what its purpose is.
The placenta lab is part of the Department of
Yeah,
Geburtsmedizin, is the German
yeah.
word.
Obstetrics and gynecology.
Yes, and
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
is located in the University Hospital of Jena. So there is a placenta lab right in the delivery room, and there's a lot of research going on. For example, placenta perfusion to get knowledge about which drugs cross the placenta barrier. Then there's another lab where they do a lot of research with placental cells, like cell lines. Yeah, there's a whole unit or department, a science department, and the placenta lab is one unit of this science building. There are some other placenta labs in the world, but placentophagy research or the research question, can placenta remedies help in the postpartum period? They've never dealt with it. So I did my Promotion, is the German word, my thesis there.
Amazing. So you started to explore this and started to do research. What was your first thesis? What was your first question you were trying to answer?
Yeah, so at the beginning, I did literature research. There are a couple of papers published already from Daniel Benishek. He is living in Las Vegas. He is an anthropologist. He also dealt with placentophagy. He started research some years earlier. But from literature research, we couldn't answer the question, what is really contained in the tissue? Because you can analyze, for example, hormones or trace elements in liquids, in urine, in blood samples, in cerebral fluids, but never has anyone detected like concentrations of hormones in the tissue, and especially after preparation as you prepare it for placentophagy, like in the placenta pills.
Well, so you did a deep dive into the literature, and then what did you actually focus on in the lab itself?
First of all, we had a friend coming from Great Britain. Her name is Linnea Shreve, and she showed us how placentas are
Yep.
processed
Hmm.
into capsules, because we wanted to do the same steps as encapsulation specialists do this at home. And then we had the placentas, and we really wanted to find out what bacteria is growing on the placentas. We took swabs from placenta samples, and then also we analyzed the dehydrated tissue, and we also wanted to know what trace elements or potentially toxic trace elements are contained. So we took samples for that, and then we also wanted to know which hormones are in the placenta tissue and what happens if you heat the placentas, because if you dehydrate placenta tissue, then you will heat it up to 54 degrees, 55 degrees Celsius. And our question was, does this change the concentrations of hormones contained?
I love this. Oh my gosh, I'm like in such suspense. I can't wait to hear the results. But before we talk about that, in American tradition, or specifically in Western states of America, there's kind of three placental preparations that placenta encapsulators or midwives or nurses or various people in this specialty are doing. The one that you're describing, where it is dehydrated, graded, and encapsulated, as one method. And then there's more of like traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic kind of preparation, where it is the placenta is steamed with lemon and ginger and cayenne and then dehydrated and grated. And then there's a third option, which some people are doing, which is just freezing chunks of the placenta that then they blend or eat in food. And I'm wondering if your lab looked at all of these or what you were studying.
Yeah. We looked at all three different preparation kinds because we knew that women consume the placenta either raw in a smoothie. And to people, and I'm talking about placenta smoothie, everyone is looking at me like crazy. The more I talk about it, the more normal it gets to me. So yes, we analyzed raw tissue for the kind of smoothie, and all our samples were frozen before, so the tissue was frozen and then analyzed. And we also had the TCM preparation and also the raw dehydrate preparation, but we did not use lemon or ginger for the TCM preparation, because if you have, for example, ginger, there are aromaöle, there are this oil.
Quite of aromatics.
And they could be antiviral, antibacterial, and we didn't know which kind of ginger. If you get the biological one, if there is more oil contained, then maybe it can have an effect on the preparation and on the bacterial load. So we just steamed the placenta. And I did a lot of research, and also in the old pharmacopoeia, in the medical books, the Chinese medical books, not always the placenta is steamed. Sometimes the placenta is also dehydrated only and then mixed with Chinese herbs, depending on the indication and diagnosis. But yes, we did all these three preparations, and then we compared what happened to the hormones.
Okay, I think we can't wait for any more suspense. Can you tell us what you discovered?
Yeah, sure. But first, we did some literature research to find out which hormones do you want to analyze, because so we had no money for this, because everyone was like, super interesting, but sorry, we can't fund this. The problem is
no one's going to make any money off it on the other side. So
and they have a lobby. No one is taking care of depressed women in childbed. Yeah, so no big pharma lobby. No one was giving money. So we first had to get some money, and we raised them through a public crowdfunding.
Wow.
It was pretty cool. So we got double the amount we needed, and we just needed $4,000 to analyze the tissue, and we got 8,000, so we could do some hormone analysis more. And then we looked at the effects that women describe after placentophagy, and they say, for example, they have enhanced lactation. And then I was thinking, okay, to which hormone can we correlate this subjective of more milk? What would you say? What hormone would you analyze?
Well, prolactin is typically the hormone production, milk production, but I'm not sure prolactin's in the placenta. And is it? Did you discover?
Yeah. 100%. Okay, you're right. So we did analyze human placental lactogen, which is pretty the same as the prolactin that is produced by our brains. And then we also looked at oxytocin, because it has an effect like the milk ejection.
Yes,
And
of
also
course.
some women described that the involution of the uterus was like pretty fast after placentophagy, and the oxytocin also enhances the involution of the uterus. So we looked at this hormone. Then I was thinking about the mental situation of women after giving birth. So if you see the placenta as an organ, it's crazy with the endocrine production of hormones. It's like exponentially producing hormones over the pregnancy. The more placenta you have, the more hormones the placenta can.
Yeah.
With birth, with placenta birth, you have a huge drop in the hormone concentration of a lot of hormones.
Specifically progesterone, right? I mean, that drops dramatically within the first
Yeah.
hours even of birth, right?
Right. And there are some scientists who argue that this hormone withdrawal is causing this mental disturbances like the baby blues that can
Yeah.
also to postpartum depression. I was working in the psychiatric unit the last couple of months, and there it was interesting because the psychiatrists said you have a kind of cortisol intoxication during pregnancy because you have amounts of cortisol in your blood. You never have them during normal stage ever. Also, neurohormones like CRH, it's choreotropin releasing hormone. These are hormones that regulate the stress adaptation of the maternal organism. I mean, I never experienced so much stress
Yeah.
during birth. And so these hormones are in a really high amount measurable in your blood, and then they will drop from one to the other day. And this is also what we did. We looked at a couple of neurohormones like the CRH, choreotropin releasing hormone, which can regulate the stress reaction. And also we looked at ACTH, which is a hormone that enhances the release of cortisol to the blood. And we wanted to find out, are these hormones concentrated in placental tissue? Because relation to mood, and it is discussed that they can have an effect in postpartum depression. And we also looked at estrogens and progesterone, and there is a dated publication from Katharina Dalton. She was great. She was working in Great Britain, and she did a lot of research with women who had postpartum depression, and they gave immediately after birth progesterone to women at risk, and progesterone is really poorly absorbed orally, so they gave it as an intramuscular. And she published all her findings, and so I had the idea that also the drop in progesterone is associated with mental health. And this is what we kind of analyzed. Yeah.
Wow. Was there conversation in your clinic about postpartum anxiety as well?
Actually not. Anxiety was
Uh-huh.
not the topic, and I read about it like in American publications, and I mean the topic of depression, postpartum depression, is now also discussed in Germany, like in the society, but anxiety not as much as I think is a topic in the US.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's just
we can.
coming to understand that it can be like two sides of the same coin, kind of.
I studied Chinese medicine. I'm also specialist in homeopathy and
Uh-huh.
anthroposophic medicine. And if you come to integrative therapies, they have a special view on the placenta. And from the Chinese view, placenta is an extraordinary remedy. You can't compare it to any herbs or minerals. In the Chinese way, it also helps to restore the energy of the kidneys. And anxiety is also a lack of or a deficiency, kidney deficiency in Chinese medicine. So I can
Oh, interesting.
that, yeah,
Wow.
like if you gave birth, you lost all your energy, like your chi, you lost maybe blood, you are in a deficiency state. And this can also, like the deficiency of kidney energy, can be treated in Chinese way with placenta remedies. So I could, from theory, understand how placenta could have an effect also on anxiety from the Chinese understanding.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And you were also saying that like there seems to be evidence that you're on this cortisol overload. And so cortisol can also cause anxiety. So that's fascinating. Well,
Mm-hmm.
so before we get to any more data, let's just celebrate what you created. From doing this research, you wrote a book. So tell us about your book.
So a lot of friends gave birth and they were calling me like, Sophia, now we have the placenta. What shall we do? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can explain to you, but I can also send you the publications. And they were like, oh, we don't understand any medical English publications, the words, we don't get it. And I was like, okay, but I was getting tired to explain everyone like how to prepare the placenta, how it could be used and so on. And I really wanted that everyone can have access to the preparation methods we used. And so first of all, we published the preparation methods because I appreciate that there are a lot of placenta encapsulation ladies are doing a wonderful job, but maybe there are also families who can't afford it or women who really want to do it by their own. So I wanted the data to be published like open access. I wrote the book because I thought every woman who is interested should be able to read and understand what she can do with her placenta. And I also wanted to appreciate that this organ is a really amazing organ and we just throw it into the bin without even taking a look at it. And so we started this Placenta Power project. And I asked my husband, who's a photographer, like, can you do a photo shoot with a model that is kind of different? And he was like, which model? And I was, yeah, would you do a photo shooting with a placenta? And he was like, no way. And then I wanted to let other people see why I'm fascinated by a placenta and also to show that this is a beautiful organ. And so things came together, and my colleague Jana Pastuszek from the Placenta Lab, she's a biologist. We did a lot of research together. I asked her if she could contribute a couple of chapters to the book that she is really professional in. Like, for example, microbiome is one of the topics that she's dealing a lot with. And so we put the book together, and then, yeah, and finally we have like a book that you can rely on, that you can look at if you're a midwife and you want to find data, but also if you're interested, if you're a woman postpartum and you want to persuade your husband or the other way around. And we also wanted to make it like scientifically evident.
That's so awesome. And tell us the title.
Oh, it's called Placenta Power.
Oh, perfect. And has this been translated into English?
Yes, it's written in German. And then I was talking to the publisher and I was like, placentophagy or placenta encapsulating is not arrived in Germany yet. So we are ahead the trend. So midwives starting to talk about it, but I know that it's a big thing in the US or in Great Britain, and they have their encapsulation networks. And we don't have all this in Germany. And I said, we really need an English version. And he was like, yeah, okay, then do it. I had to translate the book.
So you got it done. Yeah. And so where can people buy this?
Actually, you can get it online. It's an ebook. And if you Google my name, Sophia Johnson, and then the Placenta Power book, you should be able to get it via Amazon.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes so people can get it.
But what is really neat is that on the website from the publishing house, like from our book, there are a lot of links to like podcasts, or there's a little movie about the research where you can see the lab and how we did this processing of the samples. And there's also a link to scientific publications. So we try to collect everything that belongs to the project on this website.
That's awesome. I'm excited for that. So tell the audience some of your conclusions. What is safest? What do you recommend? What actually is making a huge difference? What do these numbers look like?
Yeah, so we published 2 studies, and the second one is the GBS study. And I just want to say a couple of sentences about group B strep, because
I would love to hear about this.
Yeah, there was a single case report that was published by the CDC. I think it was 2017 from Boozer et al. And they published that this one newborn had a early onset infection and then a late onset infection with group B strep and was treated at the neonatal intensive care unit. And they found the same type of B strep in the blood of the newborn than the mother had in her placenta capsules. And so this was
that was a real scare.
Yeah. And so we discussed the case with our microbiologist from the university hospital, and he was like, no, the mother must have been contaminated with group B strep, but if you ingest placenta capsules, then they will come to your stomach with an acidic environment of like pH is 3 to 4. So GBS will not survive the acidic environment. And then how should from there the mother get a bloodstream infection of GBS that would through breast milk infect the newborn, that
Yeah.
this would
Yeah.
happen? So we thought, oh, this is it's an hypothesis that we have to prove. And so we did a study where we asked women who have been tested positive for GBS in pregnancy to analyze their placentas and also the tissue. And we took swabs, and interestingly, being positive for GBS in the pregnancy doesn't mean that you have to have it when you are in the delivery room. So sometimes GBS also disappeared, so we couldn't find any bacteria anymore. And then we took swabs of the placentas, and we had one placenta that was born via C-section and it was positive for GBS. And there was another placenta that was born through vaginal delivery that was positive. So we had to discuss that you can have GBS on the placenta surface either way, even after
Yeah.
C-section, also after vaginal birth, you can have it on your placenta tissue. But after rinsing the placenta with clear water, and we did it like properly for a couple of minutes, we did not find any GBS on the raw tissue anymore. And so we didn't had any contamination with GBS on the raw tissue. And then also heat processing eliminates also the other bacteria. And most of the bacteria are vaginal flora. All these species are known by the woman because it's their skin environment.
Right.
So we hardly found any pathogen bacteria. And for example, we found in one tissue sample Candida albicans, and this was done after heat preparation. And heat preparation also means dehydration at 54 degrees, so not steamed.
So
And
the candidiasis can continue even through the steaming or even through the dehydration.
No, Candida was gone after dehydration, and GBS
After dehydration. Okay.
and GBS was gone after washing. But we had, I forgot how many samples we had. Did we had 22, 24? So for everything that we found out, you should do it with a higher sample size to confirm our findings. But what was interesting that we inoculated artificially with a really bad GBS strain placenta tissue, and then we processed it. And even after artificial inoculation with like a totally high number of germs, the tissue after heat processing was free from GBS. So it's really
Okay. Great.
heat processing. And so we discussed in the publication this CDC report and said that from our perspective, eventually the mom was like having GBS on her skin and through close skin contact, kissing, and so on. This was the transmission route and not the placenta capsules. But still,
Right.
also our findings, yeah, you can't exclude that there are bacteria on the tissue.
You can't, but it seems just like your biologist says, it's so completely unlikely. Well, can I ask you a deeper question about the GBS? Because some countries have a protocol of reflexive testing or universal screening, and some countries have only risk-based screening or treatment. Can you tell me what Germany is from? I'm assuming you got the placentas in Germany, correct?
Yeah, we do the swab at 36 week of gestation.
Okay, so it is universal screening. Everyone gets screened in pregnancy.
And no, it's a recommendation, but you can say no. The woman that entered the delivery room for our study, they had an antibiotic treatment. So if you are positive during delivery, you would get the antibiotic treatment. But we also have a woman who refused the antibiotic treatment. So you always can say no.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. So if they tested positive, the likelihood is that they would be offered the antibiotics, and the likelihood is they would take that, and then still some of those placentas still cultured positive, even through cesarean or vaginal birth.
So I should go back to the data and look. I assume that the placentas that we had, like the women's, all went to antibiotic treatment, right? And the one who did not, I can't tell you exactly what was growing on her placenta.
That's
But
okay. It's just curious, right? Because this is the debate. Are the antibiotics actually effective? Is it doing what we want it to do? And I was just curious because you were finding the GBS even maybe despite treatment, and that's just curious.
yeah, and
Well,
I'm also
yeah,
curious about this, but I can't um, give you a final answer to this question.
that's okay. Well, maybe it's a reason to talk again because this is very fascinating.
I have to admit that I do integrative medicine and I'm not a gynecologist or obstetrician.
Yeah.
That always have to go back to the literature in these cases.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. It's a beautiful interprofessional study that you've done because you're bridging so many different disciplines. The human
Yeah,
biome and biology and bacterial or virology, and then the placentology and obstetrics and gynecology, and maybe a lot of midwifery and then there's
yeah.
breastfeeding. And this is a very interprofessional level of conversation. I love it. I love your study. Yeah.
And this is also what I love. I'm really into professional and also I'm crossing borders. And so even if
Yeah.
psychiatric reasons like depression, this
Yes,
I
yes.
do general medicine. I know everything, but only a bit.
Well, isn't that life? So I know many of our listeners will be very excited to visit your website, watch the videos, and likely get a copy of your book because you want this to be open access. Can you just ring the bell for what your study showed as actually effective from a hormone perspective?
Yeah, so hormones are really sensitive to heat processing, and super sensitive are estrogens. So even after dehydration, almost all estrogens are gone. And interestingly, there is just one hormone that is surviving the dehydration process, and this is progesterone.
Ah, there we go. That's that hormone we thought must be doing something. Okay, tell us more.
Yeah, and we were super surprised because we had no idea what was happening, what could happening. And if you see the structure, estrogens and progesterone, they are all steroid hormones. And then I thought maybe protein hormones like the neurohormones would denaturate through heat processing. We cannot explain why this happens only to progesterone. Like if you could look at the traditional remedy, then maybe there was internal evidence. Midwives saw that it is helping, even if they did not explain how, or they couldn't explain how.
Hmm.
Placenta, dehydrated placenta, was used over centuries. For example, also if the placenta is not born, if you want the placenta to be delivered, dehydrated placenta tissue was given, for example, in Germany in the 18th century. And so oxytocin is also found in the dehydrated placenta tissue. It is not as sensitive as the estrogens. And I could imagine that if you have still some oxytocin and you give it to a woman orally, like imagine it is 1800 and you just give her a tablespoon of dehydrated tissue in her mouth, and the oral mucosa is really well durchbluted. So there are a lot of
It
blood
can
vessels.
absorb well. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and it doesn't go through the liver and the gut, but it directly through intercellular clefts, the small oxytocin, which is just 9 amino acids, it's a super small protein hormone, goes right into your brains, and there it can work and help the uterus to contract. So this is what I think why also animals always ingest placenta after birth, the uterus to involute to stop bleeding postpartum. And this is also what midwives describe if they give women after birth a little piece of raw placenta into their cheek and they just leave it there, they observe that the bleeding is less or it stops.
Yeah, this would be buccal administration. And it has been historically, I think in many, many cultures, a folk remedy, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how exciting it is to have your research and the people behind you at the Placenta Lab starting to publish. It's so exciting because for years, I mean, I also teach defensive charting, and I'm personally deeply involved in helping the profession stay relevant and not marginalized or criminalized, which oftentimes happens in the United States. And one of the things that unfortunately we have had to do or say, like the counsel that I've given midwives is, yes, it probably works. We've all seen it work in different ways. It probably works every time. We can't use it because the data just wasn't there. And so as an educator, as you know, I work with lawyers and help for poor outcomes and inquiries and lawsuits and things like this. And I just have to give the advice that you shouldn't use something that you can't justify in court because it would just hang you out to dry. And so for years, midwives have had to say all these natural remedies probably work, but I have to give this shot of Pitocin to stop this bleeding because it's the only thing that will, quote unquote, justify my actions if there's a poor outcome. And so it's just so exciting that there's maybe finally some evidence to support what midwives have known all along.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. The problem that we have is that we are not able to do any clinical studies because you need clinical studies to show that it is finally, for example, enhancing lactation or can reduce postpartum bleeding.
But at least it's the beginning.
Yeah,
see, the next person that does a literature search to try to prove something, they'll find your studies. So then, you know, so exciting.
Yeah. And what we also did is a questionnaire, and we asked midwives if they use integrative medicine and which kind of therapies they use, and also if women use placenta remedies and what the midwives do observe. And this research is not published yet, and it was super amazing to see that what women experience after placentophagy, that midwives objectify their findings, and they see that it is really in concordance to the integrative medical systems. Midwives see that it enhances lactation and they see that it stabilizes mood. So we have this one publication by Sealander where women were asked what benefits they have after placentophagy, and it's always their subjective feeling. But now we were able to objectify what women experience by their midwives, and we see that midwives are exactly doing what the integrative therapies say, or they are using placenta remedies for the right indication. I'm really excited about it, and midwives are my kind of favorite Arbeitsgruppe.
Favorite people in the world. Me too. Well, Sophia, this is a perfect place to wrap up. Midwives are our favorite people. Anything else that you wanted to really share with our audience, or where can people follow you? Do you have a social media following? How can we stay in touch?
I'm super happy that you're also so excited about this topic. I'm always feeling like a little weirdo in the world.
Yeah, you really span so many specialties. I get that. You are in a field of your own. I totally get that.
Yeah, so we have an account on Instagram. It is called placenta.universe. This is my account, and there's also an account for the book. And we share, like, if we have talks, the most of them are in Germany, but if there is a conference or something where we talk about placentas, then we will share it there. And also the beautiful artwork, the photographies of placentas, you can find them there. And actually, I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for taking your time to listening to all this German accent placenta research. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's extraordinary. I think this is just the beginning, and we're so glad that you're out front leading us. Thank you.
And there's one thing, I would send you a link. We have an international midwife survey going on about placenta remedies. And if you could add the link and ask midwives to take 3 to 5 minutes to answer the questions. The next talk that we can have is about our findings.
Wonderful. We would be happy to share that link both on the podcast, and also we're having a conference in November. So we'll share that link because that is just an important piece of data. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, what a pleasure. We'd love to have you come speak at one of our conferences sometime, and just so grateful for your research. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, have a great day.
Okay, bye.